together with us from QuotaPath. So thank you, Ryan, for joining us, and it's really a pleasure and exciting stuff to go through. So tell me a little bit. At the beginning, I just wanted to introduce you, but and look at that. Usually it's the best way that you introduce yourself, but I was really what caught my attention is that you as a RevOps leader in QuotaPath, you went quite fast. And what I checked, you set up all the analytics, then you made a weekly performance review for all the end-to-end funnel from pipeline generation, so top of the funnel win rates, then product data, then retention, so all across the end of the funnel. And then you build the compensation plans for the whole teams. So, and you included marketing as well in the compensation plan, which was also interesting. And you did it quite fast. So tell me a little bit about this journey and story so people can get to know you a bit better. But that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the intro. Super excited to be here. I lead RevOps, revenue operations for QuotaPath. We're the leading commission tracking software to calculate commissions, schedule your payments, give your team visibility, and ultimately pay your team, and deeply embedded in the HubSpot ecosystem, which we'll talk about a bit later. I have a data science and data analytics background, and so joining QuotaPath, we didn't have kind of the core data architecture that I was looking for here. So no data warehouse, no data visualization tool, no ETL layer, what have you. And so that was my primary focus. I think more and more revenue operations leaders are becoming data leaders and analytics leaders, because if you're supporting the go-to-market team, one way you support them is measure them and tell them kind of what to do next. So was definitely a big focus of mine. And in measuring the business, one of the things I and we think really strongly is that the core metrics of your business should tie directly into your comp plans. So if you are trying to improve gross revenue retention for your business next year, you better have your new business team and your account management team and your customer success teams all doing things and measured on things that you think are going to improve your gross revenue retention for next year, which we'll talk more about later. So yeah, it was fast because it's a passion of mine. You have to measure what you're doing and measure how you're operating. And once you do that, then you can make a plan to improve it. And so that's definitely a big focus of mine. But super excited to be here.
Yeah, picking priorities, right? If you pick wrong priorities, or you can't measure and have no ability. It's all about this data-driven decision making. But I think it's not as simple as it sounds to actually know what to measure and what to choose to improve. I think that here is the drill, right? The trick.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging. I think the recommendation I always make is your board or your senior management team or somebody has an idea of what metrics you should improve. You have a financial plan, right? And so if you think about, hey, I want to grow this business from X million in ARR to Y million in ARR next year, what are the levers in your financial plan that are going to do that? Okay, maybe your ASP has to grow pretty dramatically, or your win rate has to grow. And understanding what metrics have to improve, you have to create more pipeline, right? What are the metrics that have to improve in order for you to hit your financial plan? Figure out what those metrics are, and then tie your comp plans to improvements in those metrics, so that if your team wins, your company wins, everybody wins, is really a big focus of mine. It was interesting. You mentioned our marketing team. Our entire company is on commission plans or some sort of variable comp. We feel really strongly about everybody here aligned to driving performance of the business. Now, there are certain teams that are more on a corporate bonus that are a bit more revenue removed, right? Our engineering team, our product team, there's a couple steps from the great features they're delivering to dollars in the door, but they're all tracking our net new ARR. And they're variably bonused every quarter on, are we growing the way we said we would? So getting everyone aligned there is really helpful as well.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, that's actually an interesting topic. If enough time, we can also probably have a little bit more deep dive into. And just last thing I wanted just to tell about from the story is that, you succeeded really fast, and your career also accelerated quite fast. And I would ask you why, but tell me if my assumption and hypothesis is actually correct, that once your background is data scientist, your background comes from data, but B, you also have a lot of a business understanding from marketing, sales to customer success. And then at the end, you're also like a tech person who understands the integrations and the modern tools. And I think there's like three things at the same time, like data, business acumen, and the technology like adoption. I mean, this is quite a big thing and not that common for people to mix all together.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey for me to find where I fit in career-wise. Started in a data science capacity, which I loved. Data science to me is a spectrum of analytics and business measurement, or like you have people who are very, very mathematical, who are really focused on fine-tuning algorithms to drive 1% growth in things. And then you have people who are trying to think, are less mathematically advanced, but are trying to think of like the 80-20 to get the business, what's the thing that's going to move the business forward. I was definitely more of a business-minded data scientist. And so I carried that in while I was at Wayfair to more of a marketing role. And the marketing role was more performance marketing. And so performance marketing is a lot of math, which I really liked. And I liked operating, and I liked owning a budget. And then there were things about marketing that I wasn't great at. I'm not a great brand storyteller. I'm not a great product marketer, what have you. And so I kind of went from data to operating a component of the business, and then saying, okay, which part of the business do I really enjoy operating? I knew I liked the math and the measurement and the quick iteration. And I kind of stumbled into RevOps that way. So it's been an interesting journey. I agree with you though, the analytics component, you'll see me on LinkedIn. I think everybody in RevOps should know how to write SQL. It's like, if you take one thing away from me, go learn how to write SQL, because every single growth stage startup is going to have messy, unstructured data from one place or another. Every single Series C, Series D company too. So if you know how to write SQL, you can kind of slice and dice the data. And it's data storytelling, right? I think the thing that has led to my own personal advancement is, how do I take the data, but then tell the story to tell people what we should do next, right? How do I convince people, okay, this is what the data is telling us. Let's go launch this new pricing and packaging, or let's go do this thing because of what our customers are telling us.
Storytelling and then visualizing the data and telling the story. It's also one of the topics we were discussing in previous webinars, which is big. Ability to convey the message to the management, and ability to first to understand the insights, but then to drive organization towards finding solutions for that and communicating what's important. But let's go then to the presentation and compensation plans, because we could probably spend a lot of time on the different topics as well, but we need to tell people what we were preparing them for. So the agenda for today would be, and just confirm guys, if you can hear us and you can see all the slides, because sometimes there are some technical issues. So I'd rather make sure we don't have any kind of problems. Plus, feel free to ask questions during the conversations. We are happy to answer them right away, not to wait till the end of the discussion. So can you hear us, guys? Please let us know. All is okay. Perfecto. Okay, guys. So today, we will talk a little bit about the current market situation. Then we will dive deep into the compensation plans, how to design them, when to automate them, how to track in HubSpot, and how QuotaPath can help and embed into your processes. So let's start with the first situation on the market and the statistics. 91% of sales teams are not hitting quota in 2023. So Ryan, what's your take on that?
Yeah, a little bit of a sneak peek from a compensation trends survey we're launching in October. So definitely stay tuned for that from QuotaPath. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different drivers here which we've talked about. Challenges in the tech market, team reductions and demand reductions for software, historical bloat of tech stack historically, and people trying to be more rigorous about their stack and what's involved. But yeah, it's an unfortunate truth that a lot of teams are not hitting quota. We're definitely not in the buy every software you talk to market like we were in 2021 or even early 2022. And so what I take from this is that we have to be much more intentional with our comp plan design, and we have to be much more focused on what are the metrics that people can own and focus and spend their time on to actually succeed. So it's an unfortunate truth, but it's one of those things where I think a lot of good comes out of it for us into next year. As people are starting to think about comp plan design now, and team structure and organizational performance, they're thinking, okay, what is the most efficient team that I can operate on in a down market to make sure I maintain that efficiency next year? What I worry about, as I always do with these downturns, is the yo-yo effect of, 2 or 3 years, all the people that are let go, these companies are turning around and hiring again, and not in an efficient way. That efficiency obviously is focus of mine.
I will bring up next statistics that somehow confirms like how many people actually are not hitting. But here we can see that that there are just 20% or less who are hitting. So it's a little bit. It seems that a little bit more percentages are hitting compared to your statistics. But still, there are a big part of sales teams that are not hitting their quotas. And the other one, actually, I brought from the past, that in 2018, Salesforce also had this survey that 60% of salespeople actually found that only 60% expected to hit. So in this case, 60% were hitting, and in the 2022, 72% of salespeople were expecting not to hit the quota. And I'm quite skeptical about the statistics. I think that on the market, there constantly will be a situation that a lot of salespeople will not hit their quotas, and it's a challenge that they will constantly need to face. And the question is how to build those compensation plans that they actually can support. And there are, we will talk about in a second, a lot of reasons why these quotas are not hit. And I think, having a good compensation and the sales plan for the targets is really crucial, also not to completely demotivate your team, as you mentioned at the beginning, right? And take also some kind of economical circumstances into account. Any else?
How you treated your team in a down market and how you set them up for success in a down market is going to reflect how they feel about you in an up market. And so how do you make sure that you have comp plans in place for your team that are easy to understand, comprehensible, and not punitive? You may find that, hey, a good portion of the team's not hitting quota, but at least they understand what are the drivers for success for them, what do they have ownership over, and how does that tie to the metrics of the business? And what you really don't want is the business, you don't want to disconnect between how the business is performing and how your team's performing. And so aligning business outcomes to comp plans is a big passion of mine for sure.
Okay, so that's something we will for sure talk more about. And now 60% of sales leaders say that the missed quota are due to the misaligned and confusing compensation plans. Obviously that's also one of the. Does this come from your survey? And I'm just curious about what are the others, because my next slide is also that probably there are many other reasons, like not having enough leads, lack of knowledge, or poor sales processes. So tell me a little bit more about the survey you've been running, and what are probably other components that are also mentioned apart from the compensation plans.
Yeah, so we surveyed thousands of sales leaders, individual sellers, and ops leaders to understand the state of the market, and we'll kind of release that data. These are a couple sneak peeks, so we'll release that data in October, which we call Comptober here at QuotaPath. A lot of people are thinking about comp plans in the month of October, so we'll release a lot of that data then. But yeah, the other drivers, as you mentioned, are soft market conditions, soft demand, lack of pipeline, what have you. But there's one of the things that we're seeing from a lot of teams is that they have comp plans designed that are not incentivizing the right actions for the business. They're incentivizing things that they think could prove to be valuable for a sales team, but actually don't correlate well with positive outcomes from a revenue perspective. And so what we'll talk about a bit later is, hey, your board has a plan, you have a financial plan. How do you distill that plan into things that individual team members can control and that they can understand if they do well in this, the business does well? So from a misalignment perspective, we see a lot of comp plans that, I do a lot of consulting in the market, a lot of comp plan consulting, and we see a lot of comp plans that are driving actions that are not defensible for a financial plan. And the confusing comp plan piece, it's confusing for both confusing in how it's designed and then how it's rolled out to the team. We've had a lot of conversations with prospects and customers before they joined QuotaPath that have said, my reps didn't understand my comp plan. They didn't know what they needed to do, and they weren't focusing their energy on the right things for the business. because their comp plan was so convoluted and confusing. So yeah, big drivers here. This was kind of a multi-select, right? A lot of people talked about the down market and challenges of demand, but a lot of people said that the drivers were misalignment and confusion with regards to their comp plans.
Interesting. I mean, it's probably a little bit like of an effect of what you're mentioning, right? That if you have you have probably all the conditions to hit your financial goals. So you don't have a bad product. I mean, you have a quite enough and healthy pipeline, but your sales strategy and processes and major decisions were, you made wrong decisions. And as a result, you are building a wrong compensation plans because you don't exactly know what's driving your revenue and you don't know what exactly your sales should do because you don't have this first principle, like good strategy in place. Is that also that you encounter oftentimes with talking to the clients? So you need to actually consult them on the sales strategy before you build the compensation plans.
Yeah, you really need to know what you're trying to do and like what metrics in your business you're trying to move in order to be successful. If your goal for this year is really to generate a lot more pipeline and do everything else exactly the same, then you're probably going to need to have some marketing comp plans in place, measuring or outbound measurement pipeline comp plans and those sorts of things, right? If this year is better than next year because you drove a lot more pipeline, then you should be focused on comp plans that reward growth in pipeline. But if it's a mix, if it's something like pipeline paired with improving our win rate, paired with rising ASP and improved gross revenue retention, right? You're going to want specific people in your org who are doing actions that are directly correlated with improving those metrics. And I think a lot of the misalignment comes from, you have a marketing team comp plan that's only pipeline, right? And so they generate a lot of pipeline, but your win rates plummet. So if you have marketing winning because they're driving a lot of pipeline, but the pipeline isn't really high quality, you don't want marketing to win, sales to lose, and the company to lose, right? That doesn't really make a lot of sense. You want everybody tied to both what they're in control of and then that end outcome as well.
Interesting. Okay, so that's probably a good context to things that are coming up. So I think we discussed this. So salary components, right? There are different things you can do to reward and to motivate your team. So you have a base salary, which, if we talk about sales, right, it's usually base fixed salary. Then you have a commission, so depending on your performance. Then you have some bonuses, short-term incentives for doing something like for incentivizing actions that are important for the company right now, even filling in the CRM details. Sometimes this is also this. And then you have some recognition and awards that you can also put on top of your team for reaching certain amounts of goals. And I suppose you can tell what kind of these components you will actually discuss today. But eventually, this all results in this on-target earnings. So people can actually know how much they would earn if they would hit all of these components. So tell me a bit more. How do you see building a compensation plan, looking at those components?
Yeah, so we're naturally focused on variable comp, right? So the average seller, account executive, new business person is probably 50% base, 50% variable is what we typically see. And really what you're talking about is driving towards that variable. How do they earn that variable, whether it's a standard commission rate, and how do you drive accelerators in that rate? So, maybe you're trying to improve your revenue retention, as you kind of discussed before. So you give sellers extra points for longer term contracts. So if their base rate is 12% or 12.5%, they get 15.5% of the deal if it's a 3-year contract or a 4-year contract to lock in the revenue from a revenue retention perspective. The way that I think about comp plan design is what are the drivers to that variable that you're going to lock into the plan, and then what are the things you're testing. So spiffs or bonuses or what have you are more components of variable comp, but they're period based for testing. So you want to test if you can drive more outbound demand. So you give an extra couple points for outbound and ops created from outbound, for example. One thing and there's a lot of metrics you're going to look at with the business here, your quota to OTE ratio. So how much annual quota do you have, and what's the on-target earnings for a rep, and how does that grow from 3.5x to 4x to 4.5x as your revenue grows. One thing I will say is QuotaPath has a ton of resources on some of this modeling. We have a free kind of comp hub, comp.quotapath.com, which I'll drop in the chat, where you can start to model some of this stuff as you start to build your own comp plans. And so, yeah, it's a really good resource, free in the market as well.
Cool. So let's get into this, right? So I think this is where you start getting deeper into the compensation plan. So I'm handing over these slides to you. Awesome. And I will be able to check if someone has some questions already.
Alrighty. So as we talk about comp plan design and how you think about comp plan design for this year, really we know that the change has been, and for next year as well, we think about the change from grow at all costs to cash flow and profitability, and that focus for a lot of businesses today. And so really what you're thinking about in comp plans, or what you should be thinking about, is how do you protect the revenue you already have, improve the efficiency of your team, and really ultimately drive cash flow for the business. And so the way that I think about this is first focusing on how the finance team or the board measure your business. And really what they're focused on is the payback. So lifetime value over CAC, how quickly do you get your money back from customers that you acquire, your gross revenue retention or your net revenue retention, how do you keep or expand the revenue you already have, and then ultimately your gross margin as well. And so these are three metrics as I think about comp plan design, I really focus a lot of my energy on, which we'll dive into a little bit later, because these are the things that you're going to want to make sure that you're measuring for the business, and make sure you're in really good shape there.
And it's, I think, important to mention, right, that it's also, directed into a software as a service business model, right? So probably this isn't always exactly one-to-one applicable to more like a professional services businesses, or
absolutely. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's a good question for you. What are the big metrics you're thinking about as you measure your own business?
Once again, please.
What are the big metrics that you're thinking about that are not on this list as you measure your own business?
So if you, for example, look at the perspective from more like a professional services, first, obviously, there's this revenue that you need to bring as a sales. So we measure new business, how much is brought by the new business and acquisition for the contracts. And then you have existing business. So how much did you upsell, cross-sell, and renew from the existing contracts? So it's simpler as that. It's a little bit less on the net recurring revenue and this kind of stuff. It's more like on a contract based, where you sign a contract for 12 months and you just have an overall value.
Yeah, and you some of the stuff you're talking about expansion from existing customers is all in line with net revenue retention and how much of that revenue are you keeping from your customers year over year, right? So there's a lot of parallels that you can change or kind of model into as well. Yeah. And I think the reason I call out some of these metrics specifically is you're going to want to make sure that you know what your goals are as you design comp plans for these metrics for your business, and then say, okay, where are the things we really have to move? So we need to improve our ASP, we need to improve our revenue retention, new business dollars, pipeline. Like, what are the things that you need to move and improve that are very important for the outcome of the business?
I think that it's good to mention that, because we work with like IT services as well. And when you work on a project basis, it's sometimes harder to measure those retention revenue or monthly recurring revenue, because it varies from the month to month. But you oftentimes build account plans, and I suppose what you're mentioning is also like oftentimes easy to embed into your compensation plan. Can you develop your current accounts that you are currently managing, and increase the revenue for upsell, cross-sell from more like an account-based perspective? But it's I think you can drive a lot of comparisons here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a number of customers at QuotaPath who have more usage-based style comp plans. So think credit card processing businesses or data storage businesses that have, to your point, that kind of fluctuating revenue month over month and are not in more of an annual recurring revenue model. And there are ways in which you design comp plans can be a function of commission based on that usage monthly. right? So you get some percentage or some dollars per terabyte used, or some dollars per transactions from a customer, right? So there are definitely ways
exactly
to design effective comp plans off of more of these usage-based models. Absolutely.
Exactly. And I mean, I don't want to drag this slide, but just to close the discussion on the what you mentioned, the usage, it's like for professional businesses services, it's probably if you have a time and material and you have a difference from month to month, this is kind of your usage time and material invoice for a specific client.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. One of the big challenges with comp plans is that the average finance team spends 4 hours a month calculating commissions. So it's a very expensive undertaking, and it's kind of a must do, but doesn't actually drive value for your business. This is a range. We definitely have some customers who, prior to using QuotaPath, were spending, days a month calculating commissions. And so it's one of these things where you have to have comp plans designed and then a way to execute them quickly. And so really the question for us, I was trying to think, should I refresh this, but what was a good time really to automate commission tracking? But let me see if I should refresh this.
But we see now the slide. What is a good time for automation?
Okay, sorry, I was looking a little bit.
So it worked, perfect. I suppose.
Yeah, start again. Apologies.
No problem. But is this really an issue for the companies that it takes 4 hours or something like that to measure the compensation? To calculate the compensation plan?
It's absolutely an issue. I mean, you think about the time that the person would want to spend. Instead of doing that, right? So instead of calculating commissions and paying the team, what other value-adding things could they do for their business that are not, in Excel, writing a bunch of if-then statements, calculating, paying the team, and what's the risk of that as well? How do they, if they make an incorrect calculation, how do they go back and pay the team correctly, and how do they lose team trust if they pay the team incorrectly? So there's definitely a lot of risk involved with the time spent, for sure.
That's true. But how would you compare it to the issue that, a transparent compensation tool like QuotaPath, right? I believe that for me, the biggest impact usually comes with a transparency and the motivational part to the sales team that can clearly see how much they're going to earn, what they are at currently, and they can see what are the conditions. They can see their progress, which creates this kind of a gamification thing. So for me, it's much more usually the impact when we work with our clients was much more into engagement and the motivation of a sales team than the cost on the finance side.
Yeah, I think, commissions is a team sport, right? So a lot of what we've gone to the market and talked about has been how we improve, we motivate reps and give them more visibility into what they're going to earn so that it ties with their commission. The commission plan ties with outcomes and motivates the team effectively. And absolutely, having reps be engaged, having increased visibility into their comp and what they're going to earn is super important and something that we spend a lot of time thinking about. And we also need to engage, the ops leader and the finance leader who are involved in the commission tracking process and give them a lot of value as well in terms of reducing the time they're spending calculating commissions and dealing with payout discrepancies. And, they can spend their time on more valuable things. So there's definitely commissions is a team sport. We have a number of people involved, from ops leaders to finance leaders to sales leaders to individual reps. And how do you present value in improving the commissions process for all of them equally is a really big focus of ours.
Yeah, cool.
The question for you, I'm burying the lead a little bit here, but what do you think? What's a good time to automate commission tracking?
Automate commission tracking. When is a good time? When I would do this, I think, I'm not sure if numbers of salespeople make sense, but I would maybe put it in a threshold of when I have more than 10 or more than even 5 to 10 salespeople, I probably should start tracking it. I should start have a tool and calculating in an Excel file, whatever else that's not efficient anymore.
Yeah. I buried the lead a little bit. It's actually, yes, a couple reps. It's never really too early. And I think the questions that I really have with that involved are, how long does it take you to pay your team monthly? How much does paying commissions cost you each month? If you said, okay, roughly $100 an hour for the work, 4 hours a month, you're spending a lot of money every month on paying commissions. And then really, what are the hidden costs of manually tracking commissions and paying your team? What could you do with that time if you weren't calculating commissions? What are other value drivers you could have for your business? And how do you build kind of a foundation for your team that as you grow from 5 reps to 50 reps, you are known in the market as somebody who brings transparency to the team, motivates them effectively, and has them in good shape. So I always argue it's never too early. But to your point, number like 5 reps or so definitely is when you start to get to that threshold of, hey, I want to stop spending so much time calculating commissions and better motivate them overall.
I may add also just one comment to that. When you know how to do it and you know the tools to, what are the tools to implement it, I think you can start much earlier because you don't have this this depth of learning how to implement it. You can do it really fast. It doesn't take probably, you can even do it in 1 week. So if you have this is why you need senior people sometimes, or revenue operations, because they can deploy such things really fast. And even if you have 3, 5, 6 people, this can already help you. And as you mentioned, you can do it really fast. As long as you know how to do it and don't, completely lose your priority from other things.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're totally right. And really, as we talk about some of the comp plans, and I'll show a little bit more about QuotaPath in a minute, but we're really talking about simple comp plans that align to key financial drivers. So I really care about 2 to 3 components for a plan. We talk about it as the pizza rule. Don't have more than 2 or 3 components for a plan. So for a new business rep, give them a base commission, give them an accelerator for 2 components of the business. Maybe if they are on quarterly quotas and they close revenue early in the quarter, so a third of their quarterly quota by month 1, give them an accelerator. So if you're trying to drive early revenue closed, or if you want to drive more multi-year contracts, give them a rate for a multi-year contract. Every team member should be able to say, what are the 2 actions or types of deals I need to drive in order to earn more money? Hey, I'm a new business rep. I need to sign more full price multi-year or 3-year deals. That's going to earn me a lot more money. And so ask your team, what are the types of deals they need to drive in order to make the most money? And if they can't answer it, it's not simple enough. And motivational is super important. Would you want this plan yourself? And could you achieve this plan? Right? Do the math on how much pipeline would you need to generate? What would my win rate need to be? What does my ASP need to be? And if I was the rep, is this valuable? And then alignment is huge. Does comp plan success ultimately equal business success? Does the team member winning mean the business is going to win as well? Interested in your take on these. Anything that I was missing here, or anything that you want to add?
I think it's really, how you put it, I think this is good for everyone to remember, that build it simple in a sense that have your core component and add which is usually revenue, and then add the components for driving the actions that are important for your business for a certain year. And I suppose, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can change it on a quarter or on an annual basis, unless it's really well communicated to the team and everyone knows that this is the strategy and this is why it aligns with the strategy. And then I suppose you don't have to overcomplicate it more than that.
Yeah, I tend to argue for a base comp plan that's annual. You have a base thing that you're focused on annually, and then you can run spiffs or change spiffs to drive certain actions on more of a quarterly basis. I wouldn't recommend changing your core comp plan too frequently, because you don't want thrash within your team and you want them focused on that metric throughout the course of the year. So I think you can change components if you need to raise or reduce quotas or change rates or what have you, but like the core structure of the plan should be pretty solid throughout the course of the year for sure.
Correct. That was actually one of the questions I wanted to ask, like how flexible can you be? And the answer that you mentioned is that the core should remain on an annual basis, and then this motivational, additional components can vary and change a bit more frequently, but I suppose also it can create fraction and some kind of a confusion within the team. So yeah, it has to be also wisely managed.
Yeah, you want to give yourself the flexibility to make changes if you see things happening to your business, but you can't change those things and put the rep in a bad scenario. So that's why I do like spiffs, because spiffs, you're communicating to the rep, hey, this is a temporary thing and this can go away or be added or what have you. And so you can flex up and down on spiffs to drive certain actions. But you can't really touch the core mechanics of their comp plan mid-year. It's just not a great way to be treating it overall.
Nice.
And so I give an example here. Let's say you have a North Star metric like gross revenue retention, right? You're really focused on improving your gross revenue retention this year. I would think about how do you tie your entire org to metrics that improve your gross revenue retention. So your BDRs, your SDRs, your business development team, give them extra money for demos that are ICP in your ideal customer profile that are a good fit and have a high renewal rate. On the sales side, give them improved commission rates for ICP customers or multi-year contracts that you can lock in for a longer period of time. For a customer success or account management team, give them extra dollars if they renew a customer early or they are in a multi-year renewal. And then from a management team perspective, on a more high up level, tie variable comp to gross revenue retention. And so the reason I lay this out specifically is you should have for your business one big metric you're trying to move. And how do you make sure that your comp plans, everybody in the org from an entry-level BDR to a VP of engineering are all equally aligned to the growth of this or improvement of this one metric?
Yeah, and I think that also comes to the alignment and the nature just of each department. I mean, business development, or marketing will always, they will always do as many demos as they can because this is what they are sent. This is what their role usually is. And sales will always try to close whatever they can, even though it will be hard for customer success to bring impact. And unless you can't count that things going to change if you communicate it to the team, because it's just our nature, I suppose. And unless, as you pointed out here, unless you build a compensation plan that somehow incentivizes just different behaviors, it's really hard to fight the nature of the human being.
Yeah. I know you're totally right. And I've seen the disconnect, right, between sales and customer success as an example, where a sales team is bringing on customers that aren't really a great fit. So new business is doing really well. To your point on new revenue, it's all coming in. They're making a lot of money. Sales team's really happy, but these customers are on short-term contracts and they're not particularly good fits for your business. So you have a sales team that's doing really, really well, and then a customer success team that's doing poorly because they can't renew these customers. And so you don't want that disconnect to exist. You really want everybody in the org driving towards moving this metric for your business.
Yeah, cool.
And so you talked a little bit about how new business is really important for your business. Then how do you think about aligning teams to that? You could have a marketing team aligned on pipeline generation and winnable pipeline, BDRs on demos occurred that are good fits, sales team driving on good ICP and good customers. So even if the metric is not something like gross revenue retention, it's something like, hey, I just need more dollars, new business dollars in the door, you can build a comp plan that aligns everyone to that metric as well.
Yeah, and I think that this is why RevOps is recently so popular, because to see those insights and be able to manage it, you actually need to understand the entire end-to-end funnel, and you need to have ability to measure it from the beginning till the end. And in the past, when it was kind of siloed and there were no one who understood this entire journey, it was hard to build those connections and operate across the entire organization.
Yeah, in the traditional sales versus marketing conversation that always comes up, it was sales and marketing throwing leads over the fence to sales, right? And if marketing doesn't get any feedback on the quality of the leads that they're driving or the ops that they're driving, and sales doesn't have any insight into the work that marketing's doing, you get this adversarial relationship that's not productive. And so RevOps, I think, sits at the center of marketing ops, sales ops, customer success ops to measure the efficacy of the full funnel to really figure out, okay, where are the places we're going to spend our energy.
And interesting. So you are responsible for building the compensation plan for the entire organization, right? It's not like you discuss it with your sales directors, or how does it look like in QuotaPath?
Yeah, so we have a bit of we treat commissions like that same kind of team sport. So we have our sales leader, myself, and our VP of finance. The three of us tend to build comp plans, really, and we're representing kind of the different needs of the business. Finance is effectively representing the financial needs of the business and the board. The sales leader or customer success leader are representing their teams effectively, what they're looking for and what can be motivational. Those two can be a bit far away in terms of what they're looking for, right? So there's, and then ops sits in the middle and plays a little bit of the conductor, kind of being the arbiter and neutral for the outcome of the business. One thing I spend a lot of time on that I recommend as people think about comp plan design is I actually interview our reps, individual customer success team members, individual AEs and BDRs to say, what do you like about your comp plan? What do you not like about your comp plan? What would you change if you were in charge? And you can learn a lot about what people like and don't like, and take a couple nuggets to give them a couple wins if you can.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nudge, a small nudge that makes a huge difference. Same as with startup development, like go out of your room and start talking to people. And the end users are the ones who know the most of what you should actually be changing into your product, which in this case is compensation plan, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. We talked about some of the splits, traditional splits that we see in terms of base and variable in these types of comp plans. Typically, from a new business, someone who's driving new business overall, who has much more tied to variable comp, they tend to be in this 50-50 range. And then as you think about people who are more on an account management or customer success side of the house, that's when you tend to get in this 65-35, 70-30 split. Really, the way I think about this is scope of control, and how much control does the person have over the revenue. If they have more control over the revenue, it should be a higher percentage of their take-home pay. So a new business, a sales team member or account executive has a high level of control over their plan. If they, a 50-50 split, if they are the one closing the deal effectively. Whereas for a customer success person, churn or renewal could be a function of the work that they're doing, but could also be a function of the product or the market or things like more outside of their control. And so I tend to have them be less variably comped.
And I think the interesting also, comment to that is that also recently, how Jack also from Winning by Design was mentioning that, sales teams sometimes want to take over the compensation and the reward the commission from the renewals, upsell, and cross-sell. And they want to own also this part because they want to reach, they want to earn more money, right? And suddenly you have to pay the same price for the acquisition, which is much harder. The same price for the retention as the acquisition. So we pay premium for actual customer we already have, which should not happen. This is why also it makes much more sense to put this to a customer success team, which obviously is your organization goal, to have a lower customer acquisition cost and be able to scale by decreasing this while you have more retention than acquisition, right?
Yeah, and I think, effectively you have to pay a much lower rate for maintaining customers than you do for getting new customers. It's a CAC question. Your CAC can't your customer acquisition cost CAC can't double every time you renew a customer. And I think the other piece of having that be more segmented is, from a new business perspective, they're really focused on getting the logo to sign and get set up. But there's a lot of technical support and professional services that go into maintaining a happy customer. And I think if you bring more of that hunter mentality into support early on, you could find yourself focused solely on revenue expansion and not on actually keeping the customer happy. And so that's where I would, focus people to make sure that they have that segmented kind of new business motion, and then more of a success versus account management type of motion as well.
So you mentioned to split the customer success of reaching their impact within the product with the account managers who are responsible for upsell and cross-sell, to split that.
I tend to, so I personally, it depends. It really depends on the size of your business, right? That, I tend to like as lean of a customer interaction as possible. So I tend to like just two roles, right? A a new business role, and then a call it customer success role. That's how we kind of operate here at QuotaPath. Customer success person kind of responsible for the relationship with the customer. I tend to like that. I think you can overcomplicate over time by having a third person who's focused on upselling into your existing base. But as you have more products you can cross-sell, naturally things get more complicated and you can bring that person in. So that's kind of how I typically think about it.
Yeah, because for example, for IT service businesses, they are usually this part of delivery that you call like customer success, and
Sure.
they are account managers or / project managers who are responsible for driving the relationships. And usually, and I think that's not that in this case, usually the delivery team doesn't get the compensations, which I think is wrong. And probably they should be thinking how to also tie them to reaching certain company goals, at least from, as you mentioned at the beginning, on reaching quarter or annual goals for the company, and give them some bonuses based on that as well.
Yeah, there are ways you can. So for an implementation team, as you're kind of talking about, or more of the like customer setup team, there are things like Net Promoter Score, or speed of onboarding, or other things that you can incentivize as well. Those types of teams I don't tend to love being too variably comped. Those tend to be like more of a 90-10 sort of split. Because at the end of the day, I want them to serve the customer well and not be doing things that may be advantageous for their pocket, but not advantageous for the customer. So I tend to like those types of teams being more like in a 90-10 split.
Awesome.
The other piece I would call out here is we can give kind of expert advice. A lot of the stuff we're talking about is available on QuotaPath. So we have a free kind of comp hub where you can actually model comp plans to say, hey, this single rate commission with a contract term multiplier, like here's the on-target earnings I'm looking for. Here are the different earnings curves, and actually play around with this stuff. And so we've done over 500 comp plan consults in the past 2 years. And so a lot of this is we're trying to productize a lot of that information. And so how do we make it easy for someone to see this overall? And then the other big piece I would talk about from a HubSpot perspective is we actually can help you track all of this in HubSpot, right? So you can, this is a fake deal that I have in HubSpot, but you can easily build and deploy your comp plans in QuotaPath, but then also give them visibility into what they're going to earn in HubSpot. So actually in the HubSpot Sales Hub, they can see on this deal they closed, and then how much they're going to earn for that deal, which can be incredibly motivational for the rep that I personally find quite valuable. It's an app built into the HubSpot ecosystem, so you can see kind of how you're looking and how you're performing overall.
And do you also support on this math? So to have a final cost of the sales, taking into account the compensation plan, because this is what we oftentimes have to calculate what kind of revenue the certain rep has to bring, what's their base salary, what's on target earnings, and how it's going to eventually end up in a CAC. And does it make sense for us?
Yeah, a lot of that ends up being back in QuotaPath specifically. So you can go back in and calculate, your sales to earnings ratios and all that sort of stuff within the product. We try to, in HubSpot, visualize just the valuable piece for the rep, right? So it's kind of more of a rep facing, hey, how much am I going to earn if I close this deal? Or how much am I earning on this deal right now?
So yeah, okay. So it's managed inside the QuotaPath, these kind of calculations and reports.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really cool. So what are the biggest challenges you see when customers are coming to QuotaPath? Or what are these things that they usually are not thinking and they should take into consideration?
Yeah, the first is that a lot of them have really complicated comp plans. So they'll show up and have, just completely confusing, unintelligible comp plans for their team. So a lot of our sales processes, hey, we can take your comp plans and get them set up in QuotaPath, but let's actually go through and determine what are the best comp plans truly for your business. And so I think that's one thing we tend to see a fair bit. That's a challenge is, okay, what are the actions you're trying to drive for your business at the highest level? And then from those, what are you actually trying to have be successful for your comp plans individually, and how that works? And then that's one big challenge. And then the other is really, they have a very long payout process, very complicated payout process with a lot of levels of approvals and things that are taking too much of their time. So we kind of help guide them through a fast commission tracking and payout process for sure.
Cool. Okay, we have some questions. So if you have to make changes or updates in the compensation plans, how do you communicate that to the team, especially changes they might not like?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I tend to, if I'm going to make a change to a comp plan, I tend to float it, or at least do some research with the team first about, the same thing we talked about with interviewing. What do you like? What do you not like? How does that, what are you looking for in your comp plan? And then when I communicate to the team, I tend to come to a team meeting, so a sales team meeting, and I like to walk them through the why the business needs this change to make and what we're doing, and then why I think they're still set up for success. So to Andrew's question, think about something like raising quotas, right? It's not one that anybody ever likes. If I have to raise your quota, no rep is going to be particularly thrilled. That said, if I say, hey, okay, our board target was $1 million, and now it's $1.5 million because we expect this growth year over year. As a function of that, I have to raise quotas in order to have the right expected coverage, quota coverage for the target that we have. I could do one of two things to do that. I could raise quotas, or I could hire more people, raise your individual quota or hire more reps. Every single person in your sales team is going to say they want you to raise their quota versus hire more reps and hire more competition taking on their demos. So you go through that process. And then from there, I tend to say, okay, what are we doing to make sure you're successful? Okay, well, we're bringing on 2 new BDRs who are going to drive a lot more pipeline for you. We're running these marketing programs. We're speaking at inbound. We're doing these things to drive pipeline. Here are all the different things that we're doing for you that give us confidence that you're going to be successful. And so it's that process of, why does the business need this to change? What does this mean for you? And why do I have confidence that's going to turn into success for you in the long term?
I think the last component you've mentioned was, it was essential, right? That it's what I tried also. My thought was that if things are logical and they are fair, usually you don't have that big of an issue to communicate because people will understand this. But oftentimes it's not logical, it's not well thought, and it's not exactly fair. Oftentimes management wants to take advantage and just expects more from others while it doesn't give any enablement or support towards actually achieving that. And I feel like if you have that situation, whatever you will say, people will feel it's just wrong.
Well, take an example. Like, I would love to go to a sales rep and pay her 40% commission, right? But if I paid her 40% commission rate, then the business would just collapse. Like, I would just run out of money. And so, some of those conversations, and I know it's a bit of a glib example, but I tend to go to the team and say, hey, I want to pay you the highest commission possible if you're doing the work. And like, if you do these things, I'm willing to pay you a ton of money, but they have to be advantageous for the business. I can't just pay you a high commission rate just because I want to pay you a high commission rate. And so I think walking them through, treating them like they weren't in the comp plan design process, but treating them like they're peers in it as much as possible, and that they're owners of the business. A lot of these people have equity in your business, right? So you say, hey, like, in order for the business to succeed, we need to do this. We need to get this more efficient. Our sales to earnings ratio needs to go to this. Like, you can kind of walk through a lot of that with them, and be transparent with them is really valuable for sure.
Yeah, totally. Okay, guys, let us know if you have any more questions. I will just check through. If not, we are already hitting this after the 45 minutes mark. So Ryan, it was amazing. I really loved the conversations, and especially those insights on the side. And love to maybe see you again at some kind of event that we would do. And it was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. Really, really enjoyed it. And we'll be, the whole QuotaPath team will be at SaaStr and Inbound this year. So I'm sure a lot of people on the call will be thinking about Inbound. So it'll be fun. So thank you so much again for having me. Really appreciate it.
And just tell the audience how they can get in touch with you. I know you have your email in the LinkedIn, so maybe you can put your LinkedIn link in the description, in the chat. So I will put it in a second. And guys, we also, just to give you, we do a HubSpot support, and we totally recommend also, connecting with QuotaPath when it comes to compensation plans. It's completely seamless and amazing experience for your for your sales teams. So feel free to reach out to Ryan if you would like to not just have a tool, but also maybe you need some consulting. And I'm sure Ryan is open for some tips and tricks for you.
Yeah. I mean, I do a lot of comp plan consults in the market. So if you have questions, just DM me on LinkedIn, and we can find some time to talk through your comp plans. I love this stuff. I'm happy to do it.
Cool. So guys, have a nice evening or morning, wherever you are in the planet. And thank you again, Ryan.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, team. Bye.